So how did we get to this point? How do we arrive at this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. You posted a really cool picture and story about, I think the gentleman's name is Josh, young guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he was putting some sweat equity into his first investment property. And you were just kind of bragging on him a bit, which absolutely warranted. And then you made this claim at the end, and it kind of tweaked me, like in a good way, a good tweak.
Mm-hmm.
He said, we can turn anyone into an investor.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it was initially, but I was like, challenge accepted. And then I just messaged you with, I guess, a bit of my story. I don't see my situation as impossible, but it's probably not the most ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, and I want to preface that by saying, like, I don't think like I'm in any way, shape, or form like a lost cause. There's a lot of opportunity before me, but so I've talked to Josh before, and in fact, I met him on Bigger Pockets, and we conversed a little bit there, and then we met at one of the iWin meetings and talked a little bit. And so I know just a tiny bit of his background, and he's got an excellent career as an architect.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he's looking for somewhere to put to expand his wealth. And often as I'm listening to podcasts, I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking this is the similar story I'm hearing, where police or generally someone has a good career, they've got some cash saved up, they want to do something with it rather than just put it into typical investment, like passive investment vehicles. And that's not my story. My story is do you mind if I share a little bit of my background?
Go ahead. No, please.
I graduated high school not wanting anything to do with business, wanted to get into full-time Christian ministry, went to Bible college for a couple of years. Funny enough, came back with the business itch and wanted to figure out ways to start a business. And so just really fumbled through a lot of like ideas and ways I could do that. And real estate kind of like glanced across my path at one point. But at that time when I went for a pre-approval, I was only approved for a $17,000 mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just out of the books as far as I was concerned at that point. And eventually I had dropped several years later, dropped business, was going to jump into full-time ministry again. Wife and I planned to move out east, and I was really living a lifestyle that I believed that God was going to pay my bills.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's not working out?
Definitely not.
Okay.
And this opportunity came up, and we saw it as like a way to meet financial needs and still do my passion. Some life stuff came up, and it became very clear that wasn't the best move. And so.
Sorry, Joel. Sorry, apologies for interrupting. I'm not religious, so I'm asking honestly, out of curiosity. Why did you think God would take care of your income needs?
There's a strain of belief in Christianity that, and not everybody's like this. Not all Christians are like this. In fact, I know some of the believers that are listening to Christian believers, that are listening to this podcast, are probably pulling their hair out listening to that. But there's a strain of belief in Christianity that you be a good person and God will take care of you. You do His will and God will take care of you. Particularly if you have a calling to the ministry. So if He has marked you, so to speak, to be a missionary or a priest or pastor, or in His service in some way, He's going to take care of you. And so I clung to that. That was something, because I would wake up and read my Bible for 2 hours. It was just something I loved doing, and I felt like that was where my life was headed. And so that's where I subscribe to that belief. When
Sorry, was this purely belief, or did you see this actually happen for people? And again, I'm not.
Yep.
I'm just not a religious person. I honestly don't know these answers.
It's perfectly valid. It's a strange concept coming in many circumstances, and I think there are elements of truth to it if you believe in a supernatural entity that is completely love. I think there is an element to it, but the way I was practicing it wasn't. It was hurting us. I'm sorry. What was the question? What was that? The question again?
Did you see?
Right.
So you said I believe you said you believed it, and then my question was, did you actually see that done in practice?
There were moments where we didn't have enough to pay rent, and we were dipping into savings, or at that point our savings had been depleted, and we were dipping into a line of credit or a credit card to pay rent. And I'm holding on to this notion, stories of from the past, from missionaries and other leaders in the faith that I've just heard amazing things about. And there were certain points where like a check would come in the mail for like $500, and or some other, or I was kind of doing some freelance marketing at the time, kind of just on the side because I needed to do something. So, and I would get a client that would, but the trajectory for us, it was just, we were just going further into debt. And I was basing that on a lot of other stories of experiences in missionaries, who, I can't even remember the names anymore. If you had asked me this 3 years ago, I'd be able to give you names and dates and locations, but the short story is just these stories of missionaries believing God for miracles of provision, for entire orphanages, or for the family, or for their church, or for their city, or whatever. And then this incredible thing happening, and so coupled with that belief is the almost like a vow of poverty. It's like you don't need anything. You need nothing in this world except what the Lord provides. And so as long as you subscribe or ascribe to both beliefs, you can be content with both beliefs, like living that out. Then I guess you're fine. But I just wasn't content, and going further into debt with a 1-year-old little girl was not the way I wanted to go.
Okay. So we'll continue with your story. I just wanted, before I forget, that's really why I wanted to say these things, just before I forget. So my school of thinking is business school training. The foundation of our schooling was around following business models. Just say models. It doesn't have to be business models. Models where things were in history, a process was followed, and what was the result? We'd study both. Very good results, very bad results.
Yeah.
Right. So take Southwest Airlines, for example, because we studied that one. We studied that business a lot. One of the most profitable companies of all time. At the time we were studying it, it was the only airline that was always profitable, even during 9/11. Right. So well documented, recent history, people lived it, well documented. Their statements are audited, publicly traded company, right? Yeah. So well documented. And the point I'm trying to get to is everything I do in business and investing is following a model. And if someone tells me, but you understand, you reached out to me over social media. Social media is always feeding you just constant, crazy amounts of information. So one simple filter I have is for someone who's trying to share something with me in terms of information, like a business tip, right? My first question is, did this happen to you? Did you see it personally happen?
Right.
And if not, that's okay. Okay. Do you know the person who this happened to personally? Right? Like your example of like orphanages receiving out of the blue donations or just $500 showing up in the check in the mail. I run a registered charity, so I see when large amounts come in. We've had one significant donation for. I'm gonna guess that we advertise more than you advertise your problems. I'm gonna just guess that we advertise our needs for donations more than you need financial help.
Right.
And I'm saying there's only been one significant amount of money that showed up that we didn't expect. Right. So it's again not challenging religion.
Yeah.
It's just I don't have beliefs. Right. This is my own personal opinion. That's just how I operate a business. My brain would collapse. It's already collapsing if I took in all beliefs as if they were practical advice.
Yeah.
Right. And then
it's been
Sorry, go ahead.
It's been an interesting. The last 18 months have been a very roller coaster 18 months. Some incredible highs and some incredible lows. Just emotionally, nothing tragic has happened, but both my wife and I have gone through some deep personal. My wife more so than me, but have gone through some deep personal transformation, retrospection, and just like, okay, what do we actually believe? And it's changed a lot.
How old are you guys?
I'm 30. She's 27.
I was actually just writing a chapter about teaching kids finance for your age group from a wealth hacker's perspective, not your traditional CFP. So then I always believe if I want to say something, I should just say it rather than just holding things back. So you mentioned vows of poverty. So this is just purely charity philosophy, right? These are questions I've asked myself. So Mother Teresa is a saint. No one's doubting that.
Yeah.
Right? What did she do?
Yeah.
She took care of people that were ill. She did a lot of it on her own time, raised the money, right? She's a saint. Then you look at the Gates Foundation, which is run by Bill and Melinda Gates, largely financed by them. They've saved millions and millions of lives just by giving people vaccinations or giving people like curing malaria, curing whatever diseases that are very rampant in Africa. Millions. They can directly draw lines that they've saved these people's lives, but they're not saints. Should they be saints? I'm not saying they should or not. It's just philosophy, the philosophy of charity. Because I have to ask these questions because I run my own charity, right? So or not, this isn't a competition,
right?
But who has created more difference? If Bill Gates had made these vows of poverty, would these millions of people still be alive? These are just questions. I'm not offering answers. So it's just interesting that you bring up the vow of poverty, and then this is actually not exactly this, but this is a very common self-limiting belief in people. A lot of parents have taught their kids that money is bad.
Yeah.
Versus without the Gates Foundation, these millions of people would be dead or living very horrible lives. Right. So I'll stop there. Continue on.
No, those are valid points, and something that I wrestled with a lot over probably a good year. I was a barista. I still work for the same coffee company. My role's changed a bit. I was a barista, and I realized that I knew how to save as long as I was making a surplus, and but I didn't know how to invest, and I wanted to change that. And so I was serving coffee to a gentleman who was a regular, who's a commercial investor in town. I asked him, I said, what do I do? He said, read 2 books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Freakonomics.
Oh, Freakonomics.
I never got to Freakonomics.
That's a good one. It's a lot of fun.
It's still on my list. I just, Rich Dad, Poor Dad sent me down a much different, just a whole tangent I wasn't expecting in my life.
How old were you when you read it? This
was only maybe sorry, what's 12 plus 3? 15 months ago.
Okay.
This was so I probably finished Rich Dad like the beginning of 2018, and I knew everything that like everybody else, he put into words exactly what I was looking for.
Right. And sorry, before, what else have you read since then?
Oh my gosh. So a lot of my time now is spent in a van or packaging coffee. So it's a lot of dead brain space.
Mm-hmm.
And I've listened to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts.
Okay, great.
So my favorite book by far, business book, is The Go-Giver by Bob, who I am forgetting the guy's name now. It's a duo. The Go-Giver. It's a short little allegorical thing about being able to do business without having to become a snake or a shark, and looking to give more than. And it's just like, anyway. So that's one that I've gone back to actually a lot. Other than that, I mean, Millionaire Real Estate Investor, 97 Tips for Canadian Real Estate Investors, Fix and Flip by Ian Szabo.
Mm-hmm.
What else have I read? A bunch of Bigger Pockets ones.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look at my Audible.
Okay. Before you move on, actually, I'd ask that you read Maximum Achievement by Brian Tracy.
Okay. I don't even have a notebook.
I'd put that ahead of Freakonomics.
Yeah.
Because that'll ask you some really tough questions.
Maximum Achievement by... Sorry, get this back on. Maximum Achievement by Brian Tracy?
Yeah. He's one of the originals for self-development. It's probably the most OG would probably be Napoleon Hill, and Brian Tracy. He's several years after, but there weren't really many people, that many. Well, there were a lot. There's quite a few of them, but he's my personal favorite. They're all good. It's just you'll just find one that speaks to you. That one spoke to me, and that will ask you the tough questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see. You'll do a lot more introspection, and you'll probably need to spend more mind-free time without podcasts, without audiobooks. So one more question I wanted to ask you is, it's not so much a question. I believe in the principle that it's easier to make more money than it is to save. Well, seriously, I buy one house, I can make $100,000. How am I supposed to save $100,000?
Right.
But before that, before buying an investment property, what are you doing to earn more income? Because these are things that I did when I was your age, actually younger. It's just we had different upbringings. I don't know what your parents taught you about careers and stuff like that. My dad is a doctor, so that gave us a very comfortable life growing up and paid for a lot of my school, most of it. The analogy I like to give is I'm rounding third base. My life is easy because of that. But the career advice wasn't there. But that's okay because I went to a good school, and I had some good mentorship. We'll get into the mentorship later because that's one of your questions. But what are you doing to earn more money? Because that was always something I was doing when I had a job. How do I create more value? Mm-hmm. I am not happy here. I want to move up. So you don't have to answer that question, but you should be asking yourself that question.
Well, that's exactly the question that I've been asking myself. Really since reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad and understanding that, all right, reset. And then I went through some of the Rich Dad investing courses, mm-hmm. and they were excellent. They lit a fire under my butt that got me going, mm-hmm. motivated me. Mm-hmm. Like every other sales environment, they make it seem like it's going to be a fairly quick success. And for some people it might be, but I remember sitting down with the one sales guy, and he's like, do a couple wholesale deals and you'll have this paid off. And he's not wrong. The impression is, you can do this almost right away.
Mm-hmm.
And that just hasn't been my reality. I don't want to say that that's not possible, but that just hasn't been my reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I've made missteps, that
Mm-hmm.
I've been distracted, and but it's a part of the process, and I want to make sure that I'm learning from every moment, like every experience.
But I don't think this is before we're recording, but you live in a 3-bedroom house. Do you need all your bedrooms?
So we don't, and we do rent one out.
Fantastic. May I ask what you get?
500.
You're not Airbnb-ing?
We would rather a consistent. So this comes out of a more lifestyle and preference thing. We would rather a consistent roommate that we know and can and trust over a bunch of random people that we have to get used to all brand new.
Don't you have a basement?
Yeah, although like no clearance.
None, eh? Okay.
Very little. You have to duck most of the time. I'd be surprised if there was 6 feet.
Right. Growing up, my mom ran like the first Airbnb. We had people in our house. She would make them breakfast. None of this with a license. So I'd wake up and come downstairs and there'd be strangers in my house. And that was just my context.
Yeah.
But my dad was a student. There was no other income.
Yeah.
We had my parents had 3 mortgages. What are you going to do?
Yeah, right. Exactly. You got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
My wife would not make breakfast for a complete stranger. That's just not her MO. But if she gets to know you and even a little, and she knows you need, then her heart's wide open. But yeah.
Right. It's one thing I've learned about people, and again, not judging anyone. Everyone's tolerances for pain. I was writing about that today. I actually did a Facebook post about that today. I lead a pretty boring life. So the highlight of my month has been the fact that we took the training wheels off my daughter's bike. And as soon as I did it, I was thinking, she's going to fall, and I've enabled her to fall.
Yeah.
I've taken away her safety and security. So it's not if she'll fall, it's just when. But she'll get back up. So all parents put their kids through this. But at some point we stop. Where we do not allow our kids pain. We do not subject them to these things. Right? So I'm sure you probably have this in your family too. Times were probably rougher at certain points. So like I said, my family had 3 mortgages on a property that they bought for like $70,000. So their mortgage is still nothing. But again, there was no income.
Right.
So this is what they did to make ends meet. So you were saying earlier, you're into credit card paying, using your credit cards to pay rent.
Yep.
So what's worse? And what not all entrepreneur, again, we met over Facebook. There's so much stuff out there about entrepreneurship and how flashy and stuff it is, right? But what I've learned is the people who can accept the most pain are the ones who are successful. Not just accepting pain, you still have to make smart decisions and choose things that create a lot of leverage. But otherwise, there is pain. There are things that you do not want to do. And I'll give an example. Public speaking is one of the greatest fears of anyone. It's usually between the top 2 people's fears are death and public speaking. Right? There's usually the top 2. Right? And then fear of heights is usually way up there. And then fear of spiders and stuff like that. Right? So I knew public speaking would enable me to do more business. So in order to book my first public speaking gig, I basically had to black myself out. I don't know how else to describe it, but basically I had to shut down all sense of self-preservation. And I told the event planner, hey, I'd like to speak on the subject of Hamilton. When would you like to have me on? She's like, great, send me an email. Right? Again, I had to black myself out. The only thing I can think that's be similar is I have a fear of heights. So when I went bungee jumping, you have to walk yourself to the edge for whatever policy reasons are. They won't do it for you. You have to walk yourself to the edge and fall off. That's the closest thing I can think of. That, and you just think, right? Self-preservation wise, that makes no sense, right? To fall off something that's like the height of CN Tower.
Yeah.
But this is the level of pain I'm willing to accept to get the results I've gotten. So these are things that people all want to often share with you, right? Like you've been raised under the belief that if you just believe, things will happen. I've been brought up under the belief that you have to do things that other people are not willing to do in order to succeed. Right? Take realtors, for example. I explain this to anyone who wants to join my team. I explain to them, you make the good money because you're willing to do things that other people are not. And often that means working evenings and weekends. Right? That's like step one of being a successful realtor.
Yep.
Right? So accepting strangers into my home, done. That's just me. That's my tolerance level. That's probably, and I've never discussed this with my wife. We rented our basement, so that's not out of our context. It's not out of our context. And if it was that versus going to credit card debt to pay rent, easy decision.
Yeah.
Right. We would make it work.
It's not. It's definitely.
I'm just using it as a general analogy. I'm not challenging you on
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
And that is something that I've had to come to terms with. Absolutely. And had to come to terms with the fact that in these areas, in terms of like income, business, entrepreneurship, wealth building, I am more willing or more ready to take on more pain, to shoulder more risk than my wife is. So personally, if it's going to affect me personally, I'm okay. But the minute it starts to affect her, I have to make sure that there's that conversation. Now, we've both been growing in that, and it's been really cool just to see how that's like, but she's way more willing to like endure personal pain, like introspection, and see like the stuff about her that needs to change, whereas I'll gloss over it every day, every moment I get. And so like that. Anyway, so it's just that, so in this regard, especially when I latched on to real estate investing, and I learned that, you know, if you want to be a true wholesaler, you got to go put up bandit signs. I was up at 3 a.m. putting up bandit signs, you know, whatever else needed to happen, right? Like, and, you know, another example, wanted to test out a mail out. So I spent money, a couple $1,000s on a kind of a broad mail out, and didn't get anything for it. I knew that was a risk. I was ready to endure that pain. Now, if that was savings that was happening to, I would have had to. My wife would have had to have been in the same place, or else that for me that tension in the relationship for that is not worth it. However, because it was my personal line of credit, it's like do whatever you want to do, just that's your line of credit,
right?
And so, you know, it was well, not easy, but it was easier for me to make the decision that, okay, this is a possibility. Can I accept it?
Right.
Yep. All right, let's go.
So like you mentioned earlier, what you've seen, heard is probably more correct on podcasts and stuff. You hear people with good jobs and stuff. They're the ones who are investing and whatnot. So have you applied the same hustle in your career? Only
recently. I do some freelance marketing now. Again, I've kind of taken that back on and focused it and honed it in, and really started to apply that same hustle that I was applying to real estate investing. I'm trying to like sync the two at this point, because I see that as my way out.
Great. Okay. So do you want to get into the questions that you have for me?
Yeah, sure. So number one, have you ever felt trapped? Like, was there ever a moment in your life where your circumstances seemed insurmountable and you felt trapped by it? And then how did you change those circumstances or change your perspective? What did you do to get out of that trapped feeling?
I feel trapped all the time. Not enough cash flow, not enough assets, not enough credit, not enough everything. So have I ever felt trapped? All the time, right? Like I have a family that I need to tend to, so I don't feel trapped, but they require time. So there's things I can't do. I had to cancel my golf appointment for tomorrow. How do you change those circumstances? I'm well known for being a strong delegator. For example, I have a nanny, right? That gives my wife and I a lot of time back to enjoy each other's company without the kids. We can go on date night on short notice because we have a built-in babysitter. We can have time to go to the gym. I've had a full-time assistant since 2010. It's not the same assistant, but other than that, I've always had a full-time assistant. I have a team, and whenever things got busy, I would outsource, delegate. That's how you grow.
What about in the past? Like, as you were growing up, I mean, you said that there was a moment when your parents had to carry 3 mortgages and do whatever it took. Was there ever a moment growing up where you felt like you didn't have what it took to get out of your situation?
All the time. I was a shy immigrant kid. I'm not a good speaker. I mumble. Not particularly good looking. I didn't think I had any significant skills. Yeah. But what I've learned from my experiences, one competitive advantage. So competitive advantage, for those who don't understand what competitive advantage is, why should someone do business with you? What makes you different from everyone else? That competitive advantage. I'm often willing to outwork almost everybody. So when I ask you questions about your career, what are you doing to stand out, right? What are you doing more? Often in my corporate career, I was often the second last person to leave work. Right? The other person was just nuts. I couldn't compete with her. Right? She was the top employee of the company. That's why I was always the second last. I beat her a handful of times over 7 years, but otherwise everyone knew that was me. Otherwise, right? If it wasn't her, it was going to be me. Right? And then when I got on the train to go home, I'd continue working on my laptop. And then I'd schedule emails to go out once I got home. So then everyone I worked with knew I was still working.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I wasn't the first one into work. People don't value that. Right? They value who's last to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that was often me. Not me, again, second last. And part of my learnings from Brian Tracy is learn what's valued. What is about your work that is valued? What is about your career that is valued? What is valued within that company, your department, your organization, the whole company? What is valued? And then go do that job.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I started at an entry-level position at a company that was acquired by IBM. And then I moved into, I was in professional service operations, and then I made the move into product marketing, into a knowledge expert position. Right? You're a knowledge expert, people respect you.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? Other positions I was seeking out was in sales. Because it's not hard to figure out who or what is valued. Who gets paid the most money in the company? Right? Just simply find that out. It's usually not that hard.
Yeah.
Right? For our company, it was the relationship managers, which is essentially salespeople. Some of them made more money than the president. Right? So I was always looking to go up that ladder. Not always, because then I stumbled into real estate and I was making money there.
Yeah.
And it was more enjoyable.
Mm.
So even though I always feel trapped by my circumstances, that's part of my personality. that was something that my dad may have unintentionally taught me, was whatever it is never good enough. Keep moving up. And that's something that Brian Tracy teaches as well. Not so rough, but he talks about be in the top 20%. Because if you're in the top 20%, you're never downsized. You're always rewarded. Once you achieve top 20%, now you want to be in the top 20% of the top 20%. So the top 4%.
Have you always been a very competitive person?
Yes. Yeah. Ask my ultimate frisbee team.
I'd love to. So that's interesting. That idea of being in the top 20% was never on my radar growing up. Guess it's just part of my personality. I always enjoyed, I always wanted to be everybody's friend. Couldn't stand conflict with anyone, and wanted to be accepted by everyone. And and I could get competitive, leading up, but the minute there was someone who was obviously better than me, I would shrink back. And this was a realization probably about 10 months ago. I was like, I've never cared about being the best. That needs to change. And so it's been the last 10, 12 months have been this process of what's it going to take to, okay, silly example, but just a little bit of transparency. I see other people's bandit signs going up across the city. I don't have space on my line of credit or credit card. Well, I do have space on the credit card, but I want to be careful with that. I don't have the resources right now to put up more bandit signs. And so I see other bandit signs going up, and I'm thinking, oh shoot, they're getting ahead of me. They're going to get all the deals. It's just this anxiety trip that it's completely irrational.
Right.
And it's just that's always been there though. And so now I'm learning ways to attack that right away and flip it. But that competitive edge is something that didn't come instinctually to me, and I'm learning and enjoying embracing that. It's uncomfortable, but there's something on the other side of that discomfort that's I've never experienced this before. This is cool. So.
So then there's the competitive side. For example, I've had Aaron Moore on this show, who is a very skilled wholesaler.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm not trying to beat him, because that'd be really difficult. Instead, I congratulate him. I'm super happy for him. So that's something that's evolved in, I'm a lot older than you, but that's something that's evolved in me, and something I've learned is, I congratulate the people. I'm happy for them, right? I'm not the top agent even at Rockstar, but I'm a top 4% agent on the board, on the whole Hamilton board. But my point is, I'll look at what Aaron is doing, and I'll do a scaled down version of that. Right? So maybe you can't do all the bandit signs, but maybe just focus on the top 5% corners in whatever target area you got. Right? I know Aaron's geography that he targets. Right? He covers a lot of cities. I'm just trying to cover one. Right? I'm not trying to beat him. I'm trying to learn from him.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's not, so what I was trying to get to is, if they can do it, I can do it too. Right? One of my favorite examples is I have two clients. They met each other randomly. They're both Greek, so they had that in common, and they were both my clients. And then he came to me. So his name's John. That's such a common name that people have no idea what I'm talking about. So John comes up to me afterwards and says, "Hey, Erwin, she's a single mom, and she's government job, right? She's government job. She has more properties than I have. I have my MBA. How's she able to do that?" Right? I said, "She works harder than you do." I have that relationship with it. I can put it in his face. It's yeah. So his next words were MF. I'm going to work harder. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
That's it. And I love that response. Congratulate them. That's literally so when I talk about an aggressive response, so I still hold my Christian faith. It's evolved a lot though. If I experience that anxiety, I'm immediately saying, God, give him success. I am now rooting for this person to win, who is technically a competitor, but it's such a stark contrast to what I'm emotionally experiencing at the moment that it can't help but rewrite my emotions. And and then it just puts me in a better brain space. But what you said about learning, seeing someone else do it and think I can do that. That's been such a theme for probably the last 2 months, in anything I've read or heard, and just like a lot of thinking, a lot of like journaling the last few months. And that is like, I literally, like, there'll be moments where like you listen. I don't know if you've ever had this, where you listen to someone, they're talking about what they're doing, in a field that you're aspiring to greatness in, or, aspiring to success in. And they're probably about 10 years ahead of you, or 10 steps ahead of you. And they're talking about this stuff. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but it's like overwhelming. It's like, I need to be there, but they're so far ahead of me. How am I supposed to get there? And all you see is the gulf between you two. You don't see, don't see the steps it takes, like, in between, that are completely doable. But and so that gulf is overwhelming. And now my reaction to that is, I can do that. What are the small steps to get there?
Right. So I'll give you some small steps. So remember I mentioned how the people who make good money are the people that are willing to do things that other people are not.
Yeah, absolutely.
So past guest of the show, Roger Auger, a friend of mine, he did was he worked 2 jobs. He worked for a major mobility cell phone company selling cell phone plans during the day, and at night he had a hot dog business.
Nice.
He had 4 hot dog carts. So I kind of joke with him, it's partly serious, he turned hot dogs into houses. Right? The guy who barely passed high school, guy who flunked out of college. Right? So it's not all job people. Yep. Right? And not to discount what job people did, because it takes skill and education to get a job. And then a lot of sacrifice. I call it sacrifice now because I worked a job. Hell, being an entrepreneur is a sacrifice too. It's not that easy.
No, it's not. It's good. Shouldn't be.
But yeah, like Tahani did nothing. Single mom refugee. She started knocking on doors. Right? There's nothing stopping you from knocking on doors. Right? Tahani is. Have you heard? Are you familiar with Tahani?
Yeah, I got to see her speak at one of the Right Club events. It was good.
Right. Single mom refugee, barely spoke English. Started knocking on doors, try to sell houses.
I'll tell you what, some of the most inspiring stories that, especially in real estate, that like kind of ground me are the women who've, whether they're single moms or whether they're just single, or whether their husbands are working and they've got 3 kids and they still have to, like, the amount of hard work that they put in. Like, the guys are one thing, but for some reason, I don't know what it is. It's just, it's what tweaks. It's like, geez, like, seriously, like, if you can do that with like managing a house as well, and like 3 balls of energy, I have 0 excuses. The knocking on doors, I love door knocking, actually, especially when I get to do it with someone else. So a buddy of mine will come in every now and then. It's not something I do regularly, which I should, especially now that it's clearer out, I should make a regular habit of it. But I will make a regular habit of it. We go knocking on doors, and it's, so every now and then we get an interesting conversation, but it's more so just to like put ourselves out there and like get doing something like that.
Ben Oosterveld, you like? Are you familiar with him? Ben Oosterveld?
Sorry?
Ben Oosterveld, he's been on my podcast twice. He was a preacher's son, ran away from home. His parents accepted him back at 16 when he broke himself. And then he started working. No formal education in terms of like university. I'm sure he had further education afterwards, but dude makes lots of money now. He doesn't follow that model that you were talking about earlier. Right? Ryan Carr. You know Ryan Carr?
Yeah.
Like, his formal training was an auto mechanic. Right?
Yeah. Now, so here's the thing. Like, and again, I don't know. I'd hesitate to like mention this kind of thing because it sounds like excuses. I'm really not. Like, I've got a game plan, but for the sake of that topic, and I'll kind of engage it. But So even as an auto mechanic, you have like it might be hard to make money and to save up, but probably mortgageable at some point, especially depending on the market you get started in. So like I'm not even I wasn't, I don't know what, I gotta check that again. I wasn't mortgageable. 2 years ago, I wasn't mortgageable. I didn't have savings. I only had debt. And so really it has just been like hard. So like it just coming out of a space where I wasn't mortgageable. I didn't have any savings. And I didn't have any experience. So I've worked as hard as I know how to and continue. Like this is good because it's just challenging me to work harder, to gain that experience, to the point now where like I can talk somewhat competently about markets and real estate. I mean, I at least understand what other people are talking about. Let me put it that way. When someone starts talking about real estate investing in the markets, I'll understand most of what they say. And so I feel like that's like been a big advantage. But, so even for someone like Ryan, like I don't remember his story specifically, but even as an auto mechanic, and then I know like the market that he started out in was, I want to say easier. I'll be careful with that word. Maybe a little less complex. So that kind of thing, like I hear that, and then my automatic thought is, yeah, but, and it's just a matter of defeating that yeah, but.
Yeah, because there is a defeat for every yeah, but you got. Because the biggest yeah, but this ain't getting any easier. These markets are not getting any easier. Right? What do you think it's going to be like 10 years from now?
Not even waiting. What
do you think the market rent for your place is going to be in 10 years from now?
Oof, I'd be surprised if this place was here for 10 years from now, but that's...
You think it'll be bulldozed? We won't go into that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ian Zaba was a guest of this. You read his book.
Yes.
Ian, I believe the only formal training he has is chef school. Right? One of the most successful flippers I know.
Wasn't he in construction before?
Yeah, but he started that business. I don't know if he went to school for it.
Cool. No, you're right. It's all about hard work, and that's unavoidable. And if someone can't embrace that, then might as well find a way to be happy with status quo.
But yeah, I can keep going through my list of podcast guests. I can find you more people without formal education. No, that's enough of that.
I love that. Do you want to move on to question 2, or do you have?
Yeah. We're running out of time. So let's go.
Sorry. What are the key indicators of a good opportunity? How do you not miss it when it's staring you in the face?
If it's a good opportunity, the money will find you. You still have to put it out there, right? Hell, people put it on Facebook. There's obvious dangers to that. But I've seen your posts. You don't post that much about real estate.
Not lately. I've been working on the marketing side a little bit more lately. But.
You're a marketer. You should be marketing on social media too, organically. Costs you nothing. Like my friend Manny Cabral is doing very well with his social media marketing. His JV. Even though he knew his JV personally, not true. No, he was Facebook friends with his last JV, and then as he kept on posting, she approached him, asked if they could do a JV deal together. So, sorry, I just automatically assumed when you said opportunities, you meant real estate properties to acquire.
In general, when something lands in your lap and you're trying to figure out if it's an opportunity or not, what are the things you're looking for?
Right. That's a really long answer. So again, coming from a business background, I look at like Porter's 5 forces, for example. So I look at competition. What's competition like for that? So you can Google that. Anyone else can Google it. Michael Porter is a former professor of Harvard University. His consulting company is called I think Bain, maybe Boston Consulting Group. Anyways, very successful guy. This is the model that we use to evaluate almost every business. So you look at things like where are your threats? Supply. Who has the power on the relationships? Your suppliers, your customers. Say you're a middleman. So then both ends. What's the environment like? What's the competitive market like? How easily replaceable is your product or service? All sorts of things, right? If you give me an example, I can pick it apart. Probably. Is there an example you can give me?
There's okay. Let's say job opportunities.
Job opportunity. So I would look at, first of all, what kind of time requirements. Mm-hmm. Is it beyond 9 to 5? Say that's all I want. All I want is 9 to 5. Where is it? How long is my commute? How much grief is it? Seriously.
Yeah.
I taught like that. I had to go take down an awning was blowing off of my property. It was still attached to it, and so it was swaying back and forth. And it's metal. It's aluminum, so it's dangerous, right? So I had to take time out of my schedule to go deal with it, right? So that grief was about an hour, but that property cash flows me a lot of money, so that was worth my time.
Absolutely.
Right. I only had to do it because my handyman was on vacation in Italy, so I had to be done. It was for safety. So I look at those things, and then I always have a baseline. So, for example, you have a baseline. You have a current job. How much better is it than your current job?
Yeah.
Now, here's a mistake that people often make, and the best example is a promotion. Like Rich Dad Poor Dad talked about this. Here's a promotion, Joel. We're going to make you senior vice president. We're going to give you not that much more money. These 30 people that you don't know, they now report to you. You're responsible for training them and stuff. And you'll likely have to work another 2 hours a day. Right? Is that a good opportunity? Right?
Yeah, I mean, depends on what you're rooting for, but in my case, no.
Right? Say the money goes from like 150 grand to like 170 grand. Right? What's the tax on that? 20 extra grand for all this extra headache. Mm-hmm. Is it worth it? That's how I look at things. I'm a very pragmatic, analytical person. And then I will go to my gut. I find a lot of people go to their gut first, rather than actually breaking it down. Cool. Yep. Next question.
Yep. I'll skip number 3 because I'm looking at it now and realize that's answered in number 2. Number 4. How do you move on an opportunity when you feel like your time and your money have been commandeered by other forces? So work, bills, catastrophe, kids, family, community commitments, past debts, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. You say no. That's all it is. Say no all the time. I was at a business meeting today where we were evaluating these opportunities for development, and none of them, based on new input from our partner, so based on new input from our partner, there was another partner involved. So then the price of acquisition was actually higher than we expected, and so then everything was working more like a no, right? And I'm okay with that. No is never the worst thing, because no means less work for potentially bad returns. So in my books, that's a win, right? In your line, say it's wholesaling. So this happens for a lot of wholesalers, because I mastermind with a lot of good ones, is they'll have too many opportunities. So like 6 wholesale opportunities come their way. So I understand that for the listener's benefit, you know this. Many wholesalers are actually investors themselves. They can only handle so much themselves. They only have JVs for so much. They only have credit and capital for so much. So then the no is often just wholesaling properties, even though they're leaving like $20,000-$30,000 on the table. But what are you going to do? You can't take it on. You're just going to break it.
Highest and best use of your time.
And many times it's saying no. And that's the mistake that many young people make, is they think saying yes to everything is the right answer. Especially people who are people pleasers.
Yeah.
Right? So what I teach people is, and including I teach my team this as well. You talked about comparing opportunities. So here's a common one. Like, hey, Joel, I heard you on Erwin's podcast. I'd love to pick your brain. Can you meet me for coffee? And then coffee usually means like 2 hours, right? Right. So now that means, so then I compare that 2 hours to time you could be spending with your family.
Right.
Right? What would you rather be doing?
Yeah, I mean, spending time with my family all day long, unless it's nap time, then I can go spend those 2 hours. But
Right. Or you could be spending time doing your marketing, your side hustle.
Yeah.
Right? So while not everyone's read How to Win Friends and Influence People, so people don't always respect your time. It's not that they mean malice, it's just common to see. I think it's people's nature to not offer anything in return. They just want to learn from you.
Yeah.
So I get that all the time.
Absolutely.
Okay, number 5.
If you have looming debt, you want to save for investing.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of anyway. What do you do first as your income grows? Do you aggressively pay down the debt, or make minimum payments on the debt, saving the surplus for an investment?
So don't do what I do. So listen. So I interviewed Kathleen Vandenberg just 2 weeks ago. So that's available on Facebook Live now, on my Facebook Live. It'll come out on the podcast in the next 2 weeks. So proper answer is you should have emergency fund. And she says 6 months. And if you have precarious work, like a realtor, she says 2 years for anyone who wants to be a realtor out there. So you should have a lot of safety cushion. Right. So you would get hurt and unable to work. You have disability insurance. You have critical illness insurance. You should technically have those things as well. That's actually in my book as well. This is part of adulting.
Oh, I hate that term.
Yeah. Life insurance. You should have all those things before you should be considering anything else. Basically, you need to insure your income before you should be looking at a growth investment.
Okay, I like that.
So those are Kathleen's words, and I believe that as well. So what do? I have no RSPs, virtually no RSPs. I have no TFSAs. I have no RESP. I am heavily invested into real estate, cash flowing real estate. I don't recommend that to everyone.
That seems like insurance income or income insurance.
Yes, it is and it isn't, right? If the market turns, so the joke that we give is when someone was screening me if I was an accredited investor or not, they said, how much capital do you have on hand? And I said, that I have a house. I can turn it into cash in 30 days. And then his retort was, if the market wasn't so good, it would take more than 30 days. I'm like, that is accurate. When's the last time the market been bad?
Yeah.
When do you expect the market to be bad? Anyways, that's always my plan. I can survive for 30, 60 days quite easily. In worst case, I can turn a house into cash within that time as a worst case. But also I am insured for critical illness, life, all sorts of fun things. Instead of disability, I did hospital stay. So if I had to go to the hospital, then I can claim money. If I had to stay in a hospital, I can claim money. And then I'm no expert. Don't do what I do. No one take this as advice. But based on that, that's essentially disability insurance. And again, I have cash producing assets.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So when you finally get a chunk of money to spend, but it's not quite enough for a down payment, let's say 10 or 20,000. At this point, it could probably be 50,000, depending on what market. Should you wait until you have enough, or is there a way to spend that money to get into the real estate investing game sooner?
If you've covered everything we already discussed in question number 5,
right.
I'd be looking to joint venture. Right. If someone's new, if someone's new, you're likely to have to put some money in. So you tell your joint venture partner, this is the money I'm going to put in. And I don't like saying it, but use the GOD word, but by GOD, I will make this work.
Yeah.
Because there is no other option.
That all-in mentality.
Oh, yeah. People who know me well know I only have one speed, and it's full send.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people have faith in me.
I like it.
Right?
How do you approach, talk to, glean information from investors who are leagues ahead of you?
So step one is to read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And that book basically outlines it all.
I liked it.
You know, I can. You've heard some of my episodes. You hear the information I extracted out of people?
Excellent.
There's one example. I've given them a platform to advertise themselves.
Add value.
I'm adding value to them, right? Often they have something to pitch. For example, they have a course or a new book or a website they're promoting, whatever it is, a free book. So I give them that avenue. So even if you don't have a podcast, you know, you go back to the examples. Actually, no. The example I have is email based, so I don't think that was in How to Win Friends and Influence People. Maybe their example was to mail news articles. So I used to do that. I still do that actually. Like Tom Karadza, for example, who's one of my mentors. I see an interesting article around the subject of economics. I'll send it to him. And I don't want to send him a link. I'll summarize a little bit to make him want to open the link. Right? So I put time and effort and given value. Like, hey, I thought this is really fascinating stuff. You may want to use it in one of your economic update presentations. Right? So I've done some research for him.
Yeah. And you understand, this comes back to one of your earlier points, you understand what he values.
Yes. Oh yeah, just put yourself in their shoes. Right? It's not hard.
Yeah, it's a mental switch. You talk about people who want to pick your brain. They say, "Hey, can we go for coffee?" And they end up taking 2 hours. It's not a default. It's not a human default to want to. For some people it is, but for most it's just like, "Whoa, you have something that I want. Can I learn from you?" And without realizing that, like, learning from you means taking energy from you. And that's something that I definitely had to learn how to switch. One of the things I'm doing for the marketing stuff is I'm literally just messaging like reams of people a day on LinkedIn, and that may or may not be effective in some people's eyes. I don't care. And saying, hey, how did you get into real estate? Because it's all real estate professionals. And if they answer me, I'll start asking a couple questions. And if they engage those questions, I'll say, hey, this is a really cool conversation. I'm a writer. Do you mind if I keep asking questions and then turn that conversation into just a short LinkedIn article? And I've got a backlog of articles written now that I'm just putting out on LinkedIn every week of just random people I've contacted on LinkedIn about their story.
Right.
And now these aren't targeted so much for, some of them were, but I got to talk to Ray Hutton, the managing director at Westinghouse HQ here in Hamilton. That was really neat. I got to talk to Carol Murillo, senior business analyst or business consultant in ECDev here in Hamilton. That was really cool.
I'm having lunch with Judy Land tomorrow.
Sorry?
I'm having lunch with Judy Land tomorrow.
Nice. So, like, that's just, like, you know, it's what I can do and it's what I can offer. And and for some people, it's not valuable. I get some people saying, no, I don't want an article written about me. Right. That's cool.
And I'll give an example not related to real estate or business. My gym is in Oakville, but I needed to go to the gym while I was in Hamilton. So I sent them an email asking if I could do a drop-in session. Now I just put myself in their shoes. I know from their perspective, a one-time client is not a good customer for them.
Yeah.
Right? There's no value. They don't know who you are. You could be a whole bunch of trouble. So I actually listed for them. I told them what my skill level was. I told them I'm injury-free. I will not be a problem for your coach. Right? And if you tell me what coffee your coach likes, I'll bring it to them. Because there's from the coffee store that's next door. Right? So that's textbook Win Friends Influence People.
Yep.
Right? And then the gym owner didn't charge me, which is not what I wanted. I was happy to pay because I think the drop-in fee is cheap for what I get. but that was the outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's much easier than people think it is.
Absolutely.
To approach people and get information. I got a free gym session, right? Just by taking the time to put myself in their shoes and make myself an easy yes. Right?
I love it. It's a basic principle of marketing. Well, business in general, but if you're gonna be good at business, you need to know how to market, and you need to know what people need and want.
Mm-hmm.
Understand. So from a marketing perspective, you have to understand the language you use to communicate that need and want and that desire at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no different in our personal relationships. This is something I'm trying to model even in my relationship with my wife. Just, okay, what does she need? What does she want? If I have some like news that I know she's not going to take so well, how can I put this in a way that is going to lessen the blow, and not just because I want to avoid conflict, but because I also don't intentionally try to stress her out.
Mm-hmm.
But and then just because being selfish by nature, most humans anyway, it takes work to think about how other people feel and what they actually want out of the relationship from you.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to deliver that puts you miles ahead, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So is it realistic to expect someone to mentor you if you can't afford to pay them?
I actually believe by definition a mentor shouldn't be paid.
Okay.
There are people that can do it. For example, like in your employment, like the owner or someone above you can mentor you. That just has to be the right person. Mm-hmm. Someone who can take their own financial incentives out of the equation, right? I like to say that we can do that with our clients, for example. For example, one of my recent guests, Evelyn LaMarche, I told her no to many houses she wanted to buy. I said, no, you cannot have this house. I see so many problems with this property. You're not allowed to have it, right? I can do that, right? It's a difficult position because my compensation is tied to her buying property, but I can do that, and I have done it. I've done it many times. One of my mentors is Tom and Nick Caradza. They earn money from me, right? But because of who they are, it works. But in general, probably 80-20 principle, 80% of mentors out there are not paid. It's really, it's partly, don't want to sound like it's a bad thing to say, but it's partly ego. And also it's just gratitude. And also it's giving back. Because no one does this alone. No one is successful by themselves. Nobody, right? Tiger Woods' greatest golfer ever. If it was not for his father, would he be the greatest golfer ever? Exactly, right? That's just one person that helped him in his journey. Now, no different than anyone who's successful. Everyone has mentors. Everybody has coaches. And for a lot of mentors, this is just giving back. Right?
Yeah.
So it's there's a difference between mentor and coach. The quickest and easiest way to define the two, to separate the two, is a coach is paid.
And I think a coach, and correct me if you think I'm off on this, but I think a coach is usually brought in for a very specific result.
Yes, no.
Okay.
My coach's general, there's no specific result with my coach. Generally, it's just kicking my ass and calling me out and bitching where my book is.
Coach, yeah. That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah. But yeah. I believe there was a chapter on how to win friends and influence people on finding a mentor.
Yeah, I don't remember it specifically, but I do remember that being in there. That was a book that pardon me. It helped me a lot in my interactions on just a very basic level. Mm-hmm. What I took away from it for the first time around was just like how to be pleasant in a normal interaction. And that, it's funny to have to say that, but that's just not natural to some people. It wasn't natural to me. And that's what I really gleaned from that book the first time around.
I don't think I would agree. I don't believe it's natural for anyone. You just simply have to see how people vote, for example, to see how people are. I believe we're wired to look out for oneself first. Yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time, Erwin.
Welcome, Joel. Thanks for coming on the podcast to do so, letting us record this.
Yeah, this is good. This is a bit of a butt whooping too. So,
drop me an email after you've read Brian Tracy. Let me know Maximum Achievement. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, I'll go pick it up.
Answer some of those questions first too. You can pick it up for like $13 on Amazon. You could probably get it at the library too. It's an old book.
Absolutely.
All right.
The library may be my best option.
Awesome. I'm gonna head for dinner.
Thanks.
Peace, Joel.
Have a good one.